Our first speaker was the National President of the Philippine Association for Teachers and Educators, Technical Committee Member for Elementary and Secondary Education of the Commission on Higher Education, Board of Trustee of the Central Visayas Federation of Higher Education Associations, and the National Executive Vice President for State Universities and Colleges Teachers Educators Association. She is an assessor of the Regional Quality Assurance Team of the Commission on Higher Education and a senior accreditor of the Accrediting Agency of Chartered Colleges and Universities of the Philippines. She earned her degree in Doctor of Education, major in Educational Management in Cebu Normal University. She was the recipient of the Best Dissertation Award from the same institution. She was a course tutor of the International Distance Education for the teaching of English as a second language by the Regional Language Center, Singapore. She became the flexible learning tutor of the Program on Excellence in School Leadership for Principals, sponsored by the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization, INOTEC, and the Department of Education. She is a writer, trainer, researcher, and curriculum developer. And she has written books and published research articles in refereed national and international journals. Before serving as president, she served as the dean of the College of Teacher Education of Cebu Normal University, and her leadership paved the way for excellence, garnering prestigious awards for the college like the Center of Excellence in Teacher Education, Center of Training for DepEd's programs and projects, and Level 4 accreditation, the highest program accreditation level a state university can achieve. Currently, she is the SUC President 3 of Cebu Normal University. Friends, we are honored for her to be with us today. Let us welcome Dr. Filomena T. Dayagbil. Good morning, Dr. Filomena.
Good morning, Sir John. Thank you so much for that very generous introduction. Allow me first to share my screen. Okay, so I assume that you already have seen the first slide. Maayong buntag from Cebu. Good morning to all of us, our educators, teachers, students, and all the stakeholders who are watching us right now from across Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And I would also like to mention our special greetings to the director of BICEP, Sir Sunny Cristobal and his staff, and all the board of directors of NCCA. My topic for this morning is on learning delivery in the age of global uncertainties and pandemic. And if you look at my slide, I could not help but also put there a picture of our university, because when I will share with you our learning delivery and the mode of learning delivery in these global uncertainties, I could not also help but mention how the university has navigated in terms of what kind of learning modality shall we use amidst and beyond the pandemic. This is my presentation flow. I would mention about the realities brought about by the pandemic, and that is more or less the thing that we are experiencing right now. Then I would also share the learning continuity framework that we are using. So how come that we have been into this kind of learning continuity, and what kind of modality have we used? Flexible learning, yes, that is the thing that I would like to mention. And for us, based on our research, that is one thing that will create a new normal in the way we conduct our academic operations. Then for flexible learning as a learning modality, we have to look into curriculum recalibration, then teaching and learning design, embracing technology, then capacity building of the faculty or the teachers. Then I would also share my reflection, my personal reflection or takeaway on the things that we have experienced right now. So this is it, the realities of the pandemic. I think you will agree with me that the pandemic has caused unprecedented disruptions in all aspects of our lives, like economically, socially, politically, and very, very, very obvious academically. More than that, I believe that just being a health crisis, it is just more than that. It has resulted to an educational crisis, which I will share with you on what we have been doing as a sector in the academe. And the academic continuity when lockdowns were implemented last March, we were really in a quandary, right? And it was a challenge for us teachers because most of universities are used to face-to-face deliveries. So whether you like it or not, especially in the undergraduate level, we are used to face-to-face modality. Our syllabi, our learning and teaching designs are really more of face-to-face. But all of a sudden, last March, we were transitioned so fast to the kind of modality that we are not yet very much prepared. And then, I think you will also agree with me that the pandemic has created a new reality. Other people would say it's a new normal that educational institutions have to grapple with. And even after the pandemic, not until there is a vaccine that will be discovered, then we could really say that we have to make sure that we will deliver a flexible modality that will be safe for all our students, parents, and even teachers and stakeholders. So how would this, the global challenges and this epidemic or pandemic affected all of us, especially in the academic sector? Look at this, the statistics. This is from the UNESCO Institute for Statistics. And this was in March of this year, March 25. So what happened? The school closures really affected 87% of the world's student population. And 1.52 billion learners out of school, they're out of school and other related institutions. 165 countries affected by school closures and educational discontinuity. And all in all, if you look at this, we have 78.3 million teachers and educators affected. And so this is from UNESCO. So you could just imagine the magnitude of the academic sector being affected by this pandemic. And I would say that the global challenge that we're facing right now is changing the game of education. What kind of game is that? In terms of our academic operations. So when we try to look into the changing game of education, especially in the university, we made use of data-based or evidence-based data. So we looked into our research. So in last April, we had our research on the learning continuity framework that we are using in the university, so that you will realize that what I will talk about in terms of learning modality is anchored on research. So what did we do last March and April when we tried to make sense of all this? Because we said this cannot be. Closure cannot also impede quality and continuity in teaching. So what did we do in the university? This is our experience. We look at our institutional parameters. So we value research in terms of the ways forward, because if there is no research, we will just be in a quandary as to what to do. So we looked into our institutional parameters, like we conducted a situational analysis. What happened to our learners and teachers during the lockdown? What about the teaching and learning? What about our curriculum? Then assessment. Student engagement, was the activity or were the activities given during the lockdown enough for our students to be engaged at that time? What about our technology and infrastructure? And then what kind of research do we deliver? Because in a university, even in the Department of Education, we are also compelled to deliver research. So can we deliver research amid the pandemic? And then extension, that is also one major deliverable, even in the university or in the Department of Education. Then what about the policy that we have as administrators, as an institution, as an academic institution? So what did we do with all the institutional parameters? We processed them in terms of scenario building, and we used Polisinski's 2009 scenario building. So we looked at the probable scenario. That's where we are right now, especially in Cebu, when cases are rising. Then the best scenario is, what if there is already a vaccine that's very good? What do we do in terms of learning? And what if the worst really would come? Like there is still the continuing rise of the case of COVID-19. So we looked into all this, and then we tried to get the probable, the best, and the worst scenario. We looked into the key problems and challenges. Like what happened? What are these global challenges that we have experienced? What happened to the global community? How did they react? What were the strategic actions that they did in terms of the academic sector? And then there were emerging themes that we realized as far as our research is concerned, and which I will discuss with you in terms of learning continuity. And then we realized that in terms of the ways forward, amid the pandemic, we have to be resilient, safe, flexible, inclusive in terms of the delivery of quality education in the new normal. So this is the framework that we are using, and so that to be able to really let us all know that the kind of learning continuity that I will propose is research-based, anchored on the parameters of our situational analysis, our scenario building, and the problems and challenges that we have met, including the global scenario. So this is it. Look at this, just a sample, 3 or 4 before we go into the modality. We had a situational analysis of our 4,072 initially, because they were the ones who accessed in our internet and in our Google Class survey, with 3,646 students, although we have 10,000 students, then around 254 faculty. What did they say in terms of learning activities? They said that during the lockdown, we gave activities because professors and teachers said, okay, go and give them online activities. So there were, but our students said that the activities were not enough for them to really come up with expected outcomes of the course, according to the teachers and our students. And what about the curriculum? We asked them, would you rather have adjustments in this time of global challenge and pandemic? Then they said, yes, they would rather prefer to have adjustments. They would rather prefer to do a little adjustment in terms of curriculum offerings and also in terms of tasks. And what about technology and infrastructure? Look at this. Even if it is a local scenario of a university, our students and even our faculty said that around 73% of them really do not have a stable internet connectivity. And our students, if you look at the last pie there, that they only have one tool, and that is the mobile phone. And even in their own learning home environment, they said that it is not conducive for learning. So in a university, in a central university, a state university in Cebu, with this kind of data that we gathered, we could say that we have a problem in terms of what kind of modality do we use in the context of connectivity, in the context of access to equipment, and in the context of a conducive home learning environment. This is actually a 34-page research findings, but I will not talk about it, but the samples would just tell us that even in the context of a local scenario, and even when we go forward for our learning delivery, we have to consider data as we move forward and as we suggest what kind of modality do we adopt in the global challenge amid or beyond the pandemic. So let's see. We also looked into the review rated literature, and then looking at our research, we realized that for this new academic operation, there is the trajectory on the learning design, delivery, and assessment. So we could not go back anymore to the old normal of the usual day of doing things in the dep ed or even in our own university. That is how our research is telling us. Then we also look into the major role of technology. Like if we go for the modality, what is the role of technology, which is a major role in technology? Then the flexibility of the curriculum. That was also the thing that we also looked into and that was revealed in our research. And then we also realized that the learners and the teachers learning environment would play a vital role in this kind of learning modality that we will use in the new normal. And we also looked into the Maslow's before Bloom's orientation, like in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which do we prefer, learning or the satisfaction of the basic physiological needs of our learners? And all in all, in the analysis, we have realized that if we want to be effective and if we want to move forward to the new normal and meeting the challenges of the pandemic, we have to adopt the flexible learning delivery. Take note, flexible does not mean online. Let me see, what does flexible learning mean? So flexible learning, according to Hall in his book in 2014 on flexible learning modality, it is the delivery and design of programs and courses that consider learners' needs. Careful with this, it's a very important word, learner. This considers learners' needs in terms of pace, place, process, and products. Let me explain further in my next slide. So this is the kind of modality that we are also aspiring, and even we are already adapting we will be adopting in the first semester for the university. And I think this is also the way forward for the Department of Education. So this is a flexible learning in times of crisis. So it is providing options to learners in terms of process. What will be the question? How will I continue my studies given my conditions? So what do you mean by conditions? What kind of environment do you have in the classroom? What is the rising case of Cebu, Luzon, the non-risk areas in other parts of Mindanao, Luzon, and even the Visayas? Then the place, where will I continue my studies? Is it here in the university, in the school, or is it limited face-to-face, etc.? Then the pace, when shall I proceed with my studies? Do we force the learners to submit after a week, this kind of assessment measure, or do we give him or her a chance? And then the product, how can I comply with my requirements? Like, how do I make sure that I show the competence that is expected of me in a course or in a program? So these are the considerations when I would say that we will all really go for flexible learning. I don't say that all of us, but based on our research and anchored on the data that have been shown globally, this is the way forward as of now, amid and even beyond the pandemic. So, what are the modalities of flexible learning? As still Hall in 2014, when we adopt flexible learning, we go either blended or distance. So what do you mean by blended? It is a modality that mixes different learning environments. So you can have a limited face-to-face, and then you can also go online, or if not online, you can go modules, and then you can go distance learning. So it is a modality in which the main elements include physical separation. The best example for this is the UP Open University. It's a very good university, open university with all quality courses, but delivered through distance learning. So these can be the two probable modalities that we can use. And I know that these two modalities have already been considered by universities, local colleges, and even in the Department of Education. So this is how we are looking into it as far as our university and other universities are concerned. We initially, when Cebu really in March, we were so proud that we said, okay, we only have this number of cases. But after that, May, June, we already belong to top 10 of the highest. So initially, that was it, when there was less case in the COVID. So we realized that most probably we go for blended. So we will just have limited in-class, face-to-face. And then after that, maybe Monday, Tuesday, our learners would go to the university. And then after Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, they go off class. So the off class can be wired. Why do we say wired? Because there are also our learners and our faculty members who have their internet connectivity. So they go synchronous, asynchronous, and I think you know all these terms already. I don't have to explain this. This can be one session. How do you go with synchronous? That means all together. Then asynchronous, then collaborative, linear. This can be the wired for those who have internet connectivity. But remember, in our survey, in our research, it was also proven that some and most of our learners also do not have this very stable connectivity. So we go for non-wired, like correspondence learning. So we will give them, like we have students from Siquijor, Surigao. So we are planning to put all the self-instructional modules and deliver them. So project-based learning, radio broadcasting, we have also our own radio station, and then we have TV broadcast learning, and then the modular learning. This was the initial one, which I think all DepEd also has been looking into. But with the twist of the scenario that we are using, that's why we have to be very flexible. We are thinking of having this time in the first semester, and this already agreed. And I think this can be a possibility for those school owners who are listening to us, or even later on when you will listen to the homeschooled by our next speaker. So this is a distance learning. Like we go for off class, no face-to-face, because that is very risky, especially if our classrooms are not ready for this physical distancing. So we go all pure non-physical interaction. Then the wired still the same. We have synchronous, online, asynchronous, then linear, collaborative. Then we go for non-wired. So we already have produced modules, and we are already looking into where do we submit our modules. So for example, in a local government unit, we will place our modules there, and our students will just get the modules, and they will rather do all the activities in the context of a flexible, safe, inclusive quality education. So if you're going to ask me, Mamini, that's usually the endearment that they would call me, Mini. So if you're going to ask me, for educators, for parents, for students, as of this time, our only choice would be a flexible learning modality based on our research, whether we go blended, which will be face-to-face limited and on class, or whether you go pure off-class or distance learning, but in consideration of those who have no connectivity and those with connectivity. Remember what I said? We have to have flexible, safe, and inclusive. So we should not leave anyone behind, especially those without connectivity. Here, and then you would say, so is this really it? Is this for good? Are we really going for flexible learning? Yes, look at this. Other educators, students, parents would say, educators would say, wow, our syllabi are set for face-to-face. How do we go about it? Our strategies are not flexible. They're used to face-to-face delivery. What about our assessment? What about our learning designs? Yes, that's why we have to face the challenges of this. And I would like to share with you how do we navigate in this flexible learning mode amid and beyond the pandemic. I am proposing for the 4 parameters. If we navigate for a flexible learning, we have to recalibrate the curriculum. So what do you mean by recalibrate? I will explain that later on. Then we have to also navigate our teaching and learning design. Then we have to embrace technology, and we have to capacitate the faculty or the teachers, or I would say even the parents, in the context of this one. So you'll say, what is the TLS? TLS would be teacher, learner, and other stakeholders. So it would mean the parents. So I am always proposing this because in the context of our migration to a flexible learning modality, we have to consider the well-being of our teachers, our learners, and our stakeholders. And they include the parents, they include other officials in our local college, and all the stakeholders that have concerns in the academic operations of our institution or in the Department of Education. Let me discuss one by one. So first is on recalibrating the curriculum. When you say recalibrating, I don't say that we will change totally, because in the DepEd, we have our essential learning competencies. In the university and in higher education, we have our own program standards and guidelines that would also integrate culture-based. But what I mean by recalibrating the curriculum is that we have, as a group of educators, by discipline, by teachers, we have to map and identify the most essential and the enduring outcomes in the curricular programs. So if, for example, in DepEd, you have all these learning competencies, you have to look into what would be the most essential. And so if it's the most essential, you can integrate the other outcomes that would be there, and that can also be placed in our modules, in our syllabi as we recalibrate. For example, I would give an example in higher education because this is also my expertise. This is one outcome in the program standards and guidelines for art appreciation in the Commission on Higher Education. There is this outcome there on mount. Others would say it's an output because the outcome is more or less enduring, but they will say outcome that would lead to output, or output rather that would lead to outcome. So they say mount an art exhibit and create their own works of art. If you map and recalibrate, you can place and have them all together, like integrate them, mount and create. So maybe you could say create their own works of art via virtual production or art exhibit. So that's my example. That's what my point is, that if there are 2 objectives or expected outcomes of the course, then you can place them and integrate them without sacrificing the other. And in that context, even on art, you can also include there the inclusion of our context, our culture. So in terms of culture-based arts, in terms of the arts that are in the locality, and our own symbolism of art. So that is what we mean by mapping and identifying. And so by now, before we have started classes, our educators, our teachers must have thought of it. And I know that I have friends in the Department of Education, their supervisors, superintendents. They also have identified the essential learning outcomes, which I think is something that I would salute because they have been preparing for that. Part of the migration to flexible learning in terms of recalibrating the curriculum will be the repurposing of the syllabi. So we have to make sure that we migrate our delivery. Like if we used to have this in the face-to-face, if they will dramatize Shakespeare, for example, a localized Shakespeare, like in my English class before, I made my students dramatize a Shakespeare that they saw in the local community that would symbolize the culture of my community. This time around, you will already migrate that because you cannot dramatize physically. So maybe you can do virtual at this time. And then developing of self-instructional modules. That is what we are doing in the university. We have developed self-instructional modules of the courses that we're offering in the first semester. And these modules will be the ones to be delivered to the locality. It is very challenging, a lot of work on the part of administration, but that is the way to go as of now in order to make sure that there is learning continuity. And then the designing of instructional strategies, activities, and assessments that will achieve the learning outcomes. So I will give you later on examples of strategies that we can use. And I know also that even in our lesson exemplars, in our cultural education, because Cebu Norma is also offering cultural education, we have plenty of this, and we can just navigate in the kind of modality that we are in. So that is the first, as we migrate into a flexible design, focusing on recalibrating the curriculum. So what about the teaching and learning design? Yes, when we go for recalibration, when we go for migration of our teaching and learning through Flexi, we have to look at the teaching and learning design. So others might ask, but you know, Mamini, I have no confidence on online and even the modality of modules because still face-to-face is very important, and I think it's also very effective. Now remember, a lot of researchers would prove that online or even blended would also be as equally effective with that of face-to-face. So in other words, it's unfair to compare the two. What is very important is that the experience of the student should be meaningful, whether you go face-to-face or whether you go online or blended. That is very important in terms of teaching and learning design. So as teachers and even as students, we have to make sure that we will make the experience meaningful for us, and the teachers will make their activities meaningful for our students. And the content should be essential. This is very important as we go culture-based. Like you can get contents anywhere, but if you look at the thing in the community, if you look at the very rich heritage symbols, cultural symbols in the community, you can tap that. And I think we have a very good training of that carefully set. And the outcomes are responsive and enduring. So what are our students really needing so they will navigate? What kind of outcomes are expected of them in terms of course, and how do we give them very, very meaningful outcomes in terms of our teaching and learning design? So very important, when we migrate into a flexible learning mode, we have to look into an experience in our teaching and learning design that is meaningful, a content that is culture-based and essential, and the outcomes that are responsive and enduring. Look at this. I would always share this even amid and beyond the pandemic. These would be the kind of classes that we would like. First, we develop problem solving and critical thinking, collaboration and communication, creativity and innovation across types of learning modality. So when we develop problem solving and critical thinking, we provide our teachers opportunities to develop these skills. So the teachers must be rather able to provide opportunities for students to develop and demonstrate. I will give you examples later on problem solving skills that we can do as part of our strategy. And as students who are listening to us right now, what is your role? Because it cannot be that learning is just a one-way traffic. It has to be two-way traffic. So you use multiple resources to plan, design, and execute real-world problems. Then you use technology to solve authentic problems and develop and answer open-ended and higher order thinking skills. So this is the kind of classroom that we're using, the kind of experience that we have. And in terms of collaboration and communication, so as a teacher, we create structures and opportunities for collaboration, activities that would entail our students to communicate. Even in a chat session, if you go synchronous, or even in our self-learning modules, when we provide activities, then if there is a less risk, you will say there, can you go to the community and interview the barangay captain or the mayor or whoever would you like him to be interviewed as part of communication and collaboration, so the students can initiate the communication in either real or non-real time, and they would have to communicate and collaborate with learners of diverse cultural background. This is very important as we give them activities. Then before they have to form collaborative teams to solve real problems. I remember when I was teaching communication in one of my classes, you know, it's beautiful when you become a teacher and when you are a teacher, because you will be given a chance to interact and collaborate with your learners. Now that you are in the managerial position, lesser is your chance of getting that. But I remember when I talked about collaboration and communication, just a short, a little bit of a joke that I have. I will share with you on communication, and tell me in the chat if that is really communication. There was this couple, and the usual couple would have the fight, right? And it was only, I mean, it lasted for 2 weeks. And they had quarrel and they did not talk. There was no communication. And then the wife was already very worried because she was to go on travel. There was no pandemic at the time. And so she said, how would I initiate communication with my husband? And so she said, okay, because I would travel, I need to talk with him. So this is what I would do. So she got a letter, a paper, and then she said, my dear husband, I will be traveling to Manila tomorrow. My flight is very early at 4 o'clock. Please wake me up. Love. Then the name of the wife. And then the wife placed that on an area wherein anytime the husband can get into the room, he would see that. So the wife said, at least my husband would communicate with me. And so she placed that letter. But after that, she really slept soundly. But she woke up the following day. It was already midday. It was 9 o'clock. She overslept. And she said, my God, my husband did not talk to me, did not even communicate, did not wake me up. So she was very angry. And then she saw on paper there, a paper rather, on the bed. And then she got it, and then it was there that was written, my dear wife, it's already 4 o'clock. Please wake up. Question, my dear members of the Zoom meeting or the Zoom that we have right now. Do you think it's communication? Well, you said it's not so. So when you talk of communication, you have to make sure that there is engagement and that there is an exchange of ideas. And that is what we will do in our classroom, whether flexible or the usual face-to-face that we're having. And then the creativity and innovation. That means we provide opportunities for our students to develop and demonstrate creativity. What are these examples? The critical research methods. Then they collaborate effectively with an audience beyond the classroom to create original work. That's the one. And I will give you the learning activities. This is still part of our teaching and learning design. So what could be the learning activities that you can do? And then maybe the teachers would say, oh, Mamini, we will go to we would just be in our own house and then no connection with the learners if there's no face-to-face. Well, you can always, as I said before, recalibrate your design, and then you have problem-based activities. That's what I mentioned. If you would ask your learners to look into how do you help in terms of mitigating the health risks that we are experiencing now. That's an example. Then you go concept mapping. Then you have group research. I don't need to really explain more of this because as teachers, I know you know this very well, but these are examples to show that even if it becomes flexible, you can still make use of group research, learning centers. Like if you go synchronous, you can go chat in the Zoom. There is a kind of platform in the Zoom wherein you go by grouping and then you let them go again in a big group. That is one navigation that we can do in the Zoom. And then you can go home experimentation. You can ask your students and then reciprocal questioning. Like even in the module, you can have a question and they would answer, then another question. And even in the online gathering like this, or even in the Your Last Word, this is also what I like, especially when I go either online or even in the module. So when the last word is mine is I will say a scenario, and then our student would use your last word in order to continue. And then et cetera, whether online or offline. Like for example, I'll give you an example. There is still time that we have. I still have around 16 minutes. So your last word is mine. An example of a flexible modality can be like, one sleepless night, I lay in bed gazing at the ceiling. I wanted to count sheep until my eyes would grow heavy. I turned to my left, then tossed to my right. Suddenly, I saw a shadow passing outside my window. It was a man. And so from the man, continue, 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 continue. It's very interesting. You can try that either in the module wherein students will write, or either in an environment like this. So what about the learning resources? Here, if you go from flexible learning in terms of teaching and learning design, you need also to have resources. So where do you get your resources? Teacher created. You can make your own video. And I like it. I tried it when I made my own video. I was in a very old church, and then I made use of that in the background, and look, this is still culture based, right? So you can have your own video, teacher created. You can have your own paragraph, etc. Digital. I saw the NCCA website. There are lots of videos there that are anchored in our culture. You can use that as basis of your own lessons as you go flexi this time, anchored, of course, on the outcomes that you're expected of the course. And then the OER, so the Open Educational Resources. A month ago, the Commission on Higher Education opened this one together with, I think, Santo Tomas, LaSalle, and the other universities that have very strong OERs, and this will be shared for free, the Open Educational Resources. So these are the resources that you can avail of in terms of migrating into flexible learning. And then another concept that I am also sharing with you when we navigate is on embracing technology. So this is already the third. If you recall, we have the Recalibrating the Curriculum, Teaching and Learning Design, and then this one, Embracing Technology. Technology won't replace teachers, but teachers who use technology will probably replace teachers who do not. So when you will say, I will still love the usual face-to-face, yes, that is correct. It is very good. It is still effective. But with the emerging trend in the world, with Education 4.0, we have to embrace technology, whether you are a parent, a student, the more if we are teachers. So that this is very important as we migrate into a flexible learning modality. And maybe you will ask me, do we have the technology and the infrastructure? Honestly, I really would say that, honestly speaking, we really do not have yet. We don't have the mature technology in the Philippines. But what do? We have to have a positive attitude. We develop our IT infrastructure. So what if we don't have money? Then if we don't have money, then we have to remember that advances in learning using technology must not leave the educationally disadvantaged behind. I would like to emphasize this. That is from the World Education Forum. That was on April 3, 2020. So that as much as we try to upbeef and try to improve our technology, which we are also doing in the university, like we are very lucky that our Board of Regents, the members have given us around 20 million to beef up our connectivity, our bandwidth, our infrastructure, but that is not true to all. So we can actually look into other. That's why my term always for this morning session and sharing is on flexibility, providing options for the learners, providing considerations for the institution, for the teachers that would provide this particular education in the first semester or even in the years to come. And thus, I would always say there is what you call educational institutions flexibility. So that is it. Now we move into the very important area as we migrate into flexible learning, capacitating the faculty members. Look here, as teachers, as faculty members, we cannot just say that this is my focus only. We have to be interdisciplinary, intercultural disciplinarity, and then we have to learn other areas because of the concept of multidisciplinarity in this global challenge. So we have to upskill and rewire. There are a lot of open educational resources or open online resources that we can enroll in. And then we have to reskill and reconfigure. Like How do we go about our lab? So how do I train myself? And then we have to cross-skill. Imagine even our teachers in the university said that we could not imagine that there are students calling us in the middle of the night during the pandemic, and even until now, because we are still on a modified enhanced community quarantine, they are depressed. And they would say, but I don't have a training. And I told them every teacher is a guidance counselor, but I am having a training on psychological training for our teachers, how to manage clients and students. So this is something that is new. Like if you are very good in our discipline, but most probably we have to learn more on counseling, on other areas, we do that because that calls for us right now in this health crisis. So we have to capacitate our faculty members, our teachers. What do I mean by this? As a personal and professional, shall we say, advocacy, you have to do that on your own personnel as a teacher and as an educator. But as an administrator also, we have also to make sure that our faculty members and our teachers are capacitated. So it is both a personal and professional advocacy, and for the institution, it is also our obligation and our role that our teachers will know how to, as they navigate in this very challenging times. So I have here, I got this from the Facebook, but I really do not, it was anonymous. I could not cite the name. This in the pandemic, not every teacher can afford to buy a craft store to convert their learning into a learning wonderland, right? Or to convert their living room into a learning wonderland. Not every teacher has the bandwidth or connectivity nor the capacity to become online instructor overnight. That's why we have to capacitate them. Not every teacher has the in-house support to balance being a caregiver, an instructor, a chef sometimes, especially for work from home, a tutor, and a tech support all day. But one thing I would like to mention this to the teachers, that one thing every teacher is doing is trying. So not one teacher, really, I could just say, based on my experience and research, that is not trying. There is no defeatist attitude for all of us, from DepEd to higher ed. We say, okay, we will try. The diligence of every teacher might not go viral, but his or her work every day is vital. And that is a motivation enough for all of us teachers who are trying our best to meet the challenges of the pandemic. So you see, when you looked at our successful learning delivery, as we migrate into the flexible learning delivery, we need teachers' competence. We need resources and materials. We need technology support and infrastructure. And we need also the learner and the teacher support. That's why I put their plus. No, maybe it's not very clear the plus there, but that is it. Competence. When we capacitate our teachers, then the learning materials, we have to recalibrate our curriculum. We have to have our teaching learning design. Then we have the technology. Then we have the learner and teacher support. And down below, we should not forget that all these things, we should be able to have ongoing research so that along the way, we will be given feedback, like what is the problem as we navigated into flexible learning. So that has to be backed up. That's why I place it at the bottom, which will be the pillar of all research. This will be the basis of our ways forward. Like in the learning materials, I think they need to have more culture-based activities so that our young generation will really love their culture and be proud of it. I'll be proud of it when they try to go out and represent themselves to the world and for the world. So research is very important. We will continue researching as we try to navigate into successful, flexible learning delivery. And so this is a cartoon that I have borrowed from Jay Bordios. Look at this. What do I mean from that here? If you look at very obvious, the first one was using the computer. The other one was just staring at the window. And you would say, please don't close the window because I could not see you anymore. So, and then the last there, a teacher, yes, giving module. In other words, I really am after of inclusivity. If there is no internet connectivity, then there is this teacher who has the heart and the passion to make learning possible amid and beyond the pandemic. So my takeaway for my reflection for this morning sharing is that crisis breeds innovation. We are in a state of crisis. Our brothers and sisters out there are sick Our hospitals, especially in this part where I'm talking, is already full. So, and what do we do? How do we navigate? Because we cannot also say that we have to freeze learning. So that's why we say, we go flexible. But we cannot have online, so we have to do something, and that is innovation. What we are doing, each one of you, teachers, and even students, you are doing an improvement with what you used to have, and that's innovation. And very important takeaway, no one size fits all solution for learning delivery. What I'm telling you now is based on research, based on the experience of the university, and based on the global scenarios. But if you go deeper into the locality, maybe you would say, ma'am, I would just modify it. Yes, because there is no one size fits all solution for learning delivery across countries and across the world, all over the world. So what is very important right now is that we have to keep learning, relearning, and unlearning. And we need to collaborate from higher education to the Department of Basic Education to the National Commission for Culture and the Arts to the PSEP. That's why we're having this webinar, because we would like to really collaborate and communicate, and we would like to help each other. And the very important there is that we have to change our mindset. Because even if how best your curriculum is, even if how good your infra is, but there is no change of mindset on the part of the teachers, then they will say, oh, this is very difficult, etc. Then nothing will happen. Our way forward towards flexible learning will be very difficult, and will really be a road less traveled if we will not communicate and collaborate, and if we will not change the mindset. So allow me, so this is my second to the last slide. Allow me to share with you my the takeaway is that when you have the mindset, this is our comfort zone right now, face to face, the usual way of doing things, but we have to go out of our comfort zone in order to make education flexible, resilient, safe, inclusive, and quality. So our dear teachers who are listening to me, I am also a teacher, our dear parents, our dear students, our dear stakeholders, we need to go out of our comfort zone to make sure that this kind of learning modality in the new normal will be possible as we continue to aspire for a safe, flexible, quality, resilient, and inclusive cultural education. Maayong buntag kanatong tanan, and thank you for listening.
Maraming salamat, Dr. Dayagbil, para sa isang makabuluhang pagbabahagi patungkol sa mode of delivery in the age of global uncertainties and epidemics. Ang dami nating takeaway, no? Mula sa mga takeaways ni Dr. Dayagbil, no? Isa sa mga pinaka tumatak sa akin ay yung kahalagahan ng pananaliksik sa paggawa ng mga solusyon, no? Kaya nga sabi ni Dr. Dayagbil, kung hindi tayo magre-research bago gumawa ng mga programs o programa o solusyon, para tayong naliligaw sa kung ano yung dapat nating gawin. And I would also like to anchor on this, I think, no, one of the things that Ma'am Dayagbil is trying to impress to us is we have the power as teachers to find ways on how we can make this work. Since this is actually novel for us, everyone is adjusting. So we have now the power, teachers, to innovate. Sabi nga, problem is the mother of innovation, should I say? Parang may ganong saying, you know? So, kaya natin to mga kapwa ko guro, no? So, he is an educator and motivational speaker. Worked as a vice principal for academic affairs, a teacher and head of department at HFSE International School. Worked for 10 years in a private Catholic school holding various administrative and supervisory positions. Has strong experience in top-level management assigned with development, implementation, and monitoring of extensive programs, both for academics and psycho-spiritual formation for all stakeholders of the school. Further, he has significant expertise in classroom management and curriculum planning and development with a degree in secondary education, specializing in religious and values education and human. Holds a master's degree also in pastoral ministry and Master of Arts in religious education. He holds a certificate or holds certificates in teaching and child psychology. Mga kapatid, mula pa po ito sa Singapore. Maraming salamat po, sir, sa pagdalo po sa amin at pagbibigay kaalaman. Salubungin po natin, Mr. Joseph Regalado Tambio. Sir Joseph?
Hi, magandang umaga.
Good morning po.
My audio is clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me just share my screen first. And while sharing this, I would like first and foremost to express my deepest gratitude to those who invited me in this K-GuMa. I must say it's an honor, and at the same time, I am very much humbled because I am lined up with a lot of speakers who are, I must say, mga bigaten, and my only credential to be able to speak with you now is that I believe in the mission to educate those who want to learn. Yes, I am currently based here in Singapore, but this goes without saying that this is an evidence that we can really be together. We are just physically distant, but we can be related and connected virtually and technologically. When I was given the task to share homeschooling, I would like to give a disclaimer at this point. I have not really experienced homeschooling personally because I don't have any kid to do homeschool, but I have been in constant relations with people who are really experts, I must say, in homeschooling. And since the pandemic, we've been baffled with so many critical moments. Here in Singapore, when this COVID-19 came, we really took effort to prepare. In the school where I used to work, we laid down all the things that we thought would be necessary. We did consider a lot of matters that may possibly affect the delivery of education. We collaborated very well with the parents, whom I believe are key stakeholders in this endeavor. But before we could have finally launched the program, then the government announced a circuit breaker. We call it here circuit breaker, not lockdown. So the schools were asked to close, and because of that, we were left with no other choice but to go on a home-based learning. Okay, and home-based learning is somehow similar with the homeschooling. Now, I will not just be discussing about homeschooling, but I am using the two important words to go about this presentation. Okay, I barely have 40 minutes to share this with you. I have homeschooling, curriculum, and character. These two words I strongly believe are most essential in dealing with the education of the learners, as the previous speaker mentioned. Learner is what I usually use. We don't just call them students, and we don't just call them kids or pupils, but they are learners. Learners because it is more encompassing. So with reference to them, I shall be sharing with you what an effective curriculum is. Well, of course, there will be more, and there had been a lot of talks actually about curriculum, more technical and more detailed, what I would like to share is a new perspective. It's a new way of dealing and facing the word curriculum. And character here would mean later on we'll be sharing with you the character both of homeschooling and those who will be involved. The references I have actually cited here. The presentation will be available, I suppose, later on since it is recorded. Okay. By next month, it will be a back to school season. And I could imagine and I could recall childhood memories. Whenever it is opening school season, well, those famous bookstores would ship their displays into notebooks. Okay? Siguro naalala pa ninyo yung mga design ng notebooks ninyo. Kanya-kanyang pasikat, kanya-kanyang cover. Yung iba tinatahi yung notebook, yung iba would prefer it on a spring mount. But it's an experience, right? I think we will all agree that it's a happy moment for us. Bago lahat, at least for some, others would not have that luxury to have new things. But it's back to school. I would like to call your attention on the faces of these three students, these animated students. We don't seem to see anyone happy. Okay, back to school, but they are all frowning. Malulungkot yung mukha nila. And if you see, let's see. Tingnan natin, bakit kaya sila malungkot? It's not as usual. And we call this supposedly a happy experience. But are we really all excited? Are we really all excited? And we are dealing here, my dear teachers and parents and some students as well. We are all aware that the youth, their role is really very essential in nation building. Mahalaga yung kanilang papel na ginagampanan sa pagtataguyod ng ating bansa. And I am very happy that I am connected. And now at least I have the opportunity to be part of this. I strongly believe in the essence of culture in every society, to every individual for that matter. And that's why when I was invited, I immediately said yes, because I believe in the mission and the ideas of this. And the youth should not just be gifted with the intellect, and they must as well be developed in terms of their cultural identity, so that nation building will not just be about infrastructure, it will not just be about political, it will also be anchored on the importance of their identity as Filipinos. Okay, let's make this very light and simple. Can you recall this song? This is a very familiar song to most of us. Nanay, tatay, gusto kong tinapay, ate, kuya, gusto kong kape. Lahat ng gusto ko ay susundin nyo. Siyang magkamali ay pipingutin ko. Then may kamay pang ginagamit in sharing this song. Who could recall this song? Okay, ladong bata ito. Okay, and later on I'll share why. Why am I sharing this? Since my topic is homeschooling, character and curriculum, I'll try to connect this later on in character formation. But I would like you to be sensitive enough with the lyrics of the song. Okay, homeschooling. Of course, we're speaking about home. And therein, we can help also, but underline the important role of the parents and whoever will be part of that place where homeschooling will be held. Okay, so while doing this, siguro yung iba iniisip pa kung ano yung kanta. Baka yung iba hindi lang binasa, no? At they tried to recall the song. I don't know, but in Manila, at least where I grew up, This is a song which is, I suppose, uh, famous. I don't know in other region to where some of our attendees are from. Okay, so my dear parents and teachers, are we ready? Are you sad or are you happy when it's time for your children to go back to school? And why? We ask this. Are we ready? What is our feeling? Uh, Sooner or later, before we know it, it's already August. And August 24, as David said, will be the opening of the academic year. Are we sad? Are we happy? Are we having mixed emotions? What can we expect? We are expecting something which is unexpected, unprecedented, as Dr. Dayagbil said. Wala tayong pagkukunan ng mga nakalipas na karanasan to be our basis for this. Okay? So ask ourselves now, back to school? Are we happy that the children are going back? The big question is, they will be going back to school. The school year now becomes relative because the mode of instruction and how they'll be educated is now a personal choice. I suppose every learning is personal. Although it may happen in the society, it remains to be a personal preference, either by the parents or by the students. So the focus later on will be on homeschooling, and we will try to squeeze in all these ideas and decide. I'll share with you some guidelines. The thing now here is, before I proceed further, I am not discounting the role of teachers when I am discussing homeschooling. Not at all. I strongly believe that the teachers remain to be the main character in education, in letting the students, the learners for that matter, to learn. It just so happened that when we speak of homeschooling, of course, the role of the parents now is not just to be someone who takes care of the kid. They are not just the one who will be preparing them the food. They will also be the one, as expected, to take, I would like to say, temporarily, the role of a teacher. Not because the teacher quit, not because the teacher decided not to proceed, but because that is the situation that we are in. I am really not in total agreement with the word new normal when we speak of homeschooling. Homeschooling did not come up just because there's pandemic. No, many years ago it has been an option already. Okay, it just so happened that it's being highlighted now. It just so happened that teachers, parents are considering this. Okay, we say, what is homeschooling actually? Simply, it is education of children at home, typically by parents or by tutors, rather than in other formal settings of public or private school. So it's still, the home is the key word. I think that's the big idea here. Home, typically by parents. So let's himay-himayin natin yung kahulugan ng homeschooling. The big idea here is home. Okay, you know, here in Singapore, when we had the circuit breaker, when the school closed, I was able to talk to almost all parents and ask them how they feel about it. And we got a lot of reactions to parents. I've received a lot of messages, hundreds of them. Parents telling me, Teacher Josh, what are we going to do? We're also working from home. So imagine the situation. The first thing that these parents told me, we are also working from home. We cannot do it. So we'll teach the kids. How are we going? Especially here, as you all know, I received probably 5 out of 10 parents who asked, teacher, how can we teach them Singapore math? We are not so familiar with it. So we asked, homeschooling is a bit challenging, but I will share with you some perspective that you might want to consider in case homeschooling becomes your choice of uh, mode of educating your kids, which I suppose at this time there have been a lot of parents already enrolled in homeschooling schools or some homeschooling providers. Later on, I'll discuss the kinds of homeschooling which you might want to look into. Of course, it's a legal option for parents. Even here in the Philippines, it's a legal option. There's nothing violative about homeschooling. Even the state or the government is not discouraging it. In fact, there is a way to be connected, and so that makes it really a credible credential later on for your kids if they wish to go on homeschooling. Okay. Uh, I would like to draw your attention with the line. It says, provide children with a learning environment as an alternative to public or private schools. Okay, so homeschooling is just an alternative. It is not the only means to go on with educating our kids, especially during this uh, pandemic. Or there had been a lot of research done also asking, what if finally everything is good? I think I've heard a lot of students who said they still prefer to go back to the normal traditional school, the face to face. So it's a legal option. I would like to give emphasis on that because I've received also a lot of questions from parents. Uh, Sir, what if I homeschool my child? Will it be a valid? Will they receive any valid certification? Will it allow them to progress, move up to the next academic level? These are questions which later I will deal with. Okay. Okay, as I've said, this form of schooling is recognized by the Department of Education, provided, okay, this is a very important matter. A parent teacher is at least a college graduate and is able to provide at least 4 hours of instructions. Okay, 4 hours of instructions. Uh, but again, this is not for strict compliance, I would like to believe. And as long as later on we will consider what are the things that we need to factor in to be able to come up with an effective homeschooling program for our kids. Okay, homeschooling means no pressure of learning all things. Okay, because as far I don't know if it has changed, but in a regular classroom, at least for the elementary, there are so many subjects to be covered, right? There would be at least, let's say, 7 or 8. But in homeschooling, not necessarily to cover all of this. Okay, and it is done at any time, anywhere by the learner, the mother, or if you choose to have a provider, homeschooling, which there are so many, what you just need to do is later on, probably you can go online and search for homeschooling. It will give you the list of school and provider for homeschooling. So no pressure of learning all things. Okay, here in Singapore, the unlike in the Philippines, There are so many subjects here. What is being covered in the school is only maths, English, and science, and they have co-curricular activities. Okay, in the school where I taught, we only provide them. There are only 4 subjects: mathematics, English, done every day, and then we have science, and because it's a Filipino international school, we have Filipino, the mother tongue, which is done twice a week. So you can imagine it's a half day class, 4 hours. Still, when you go homeschooling, you can limit the lessons that you would like to provide. I'll discuss it later in details. Okay. Please take note of this slide, which is very important. Those who are considering homeschooling. Okay, it says home education should not make an attempt to bring the school construct into the home, or a view of education as an academic preliminary to life. Okay, so it is very impossible, highly impossible, to bring the school setup, the entire school setup, at home. It will not happen, and do not make not even an attempt, because it's unlikely to take place. As I have said, homeschooling must be viewed as an alternative, and therefore alternative there means we need to tailor fit based on the learners. The basis here would always be the learners. What suits the child, okay? Because as Dr. Dayagbil said, there's no size fits all. Wala pong ganon sa homeschooling. Wala pong ganon. Kasi what may work for one child may not be as good, and child may not be receptive. So you have to really consider. Okay, let's see. Proceed. So in homeschooling, this is a classroom. We don't try to do a setup like this. Although, if you have, of course, the capacity to do so, that would make learning for the kids more conducive, for the learners to be more engaged. I like that word used, engage. Okay, so in homeschooling, it's important that, of course, we consider this. Okay, let me get to this. What are the factors to consider? Okay, if you're considering homeschooling, what are the things that we must bear in mind? So I have here a checklist. First is flexibility in time. This supports the idea of flexible learning. Okay, the situation is time is of the essence. The requirement is at least 4 hours, but ideally, I've talked to some parents who are doing homeschooling for their children. What they say is the most would be 2 hours. Okay, 2 hours or 2.5 to cover particular lessons or subjects. Why? Because while we believe that home is the best place for the kids to learn, dito lahat unang natuto tayo sa tahanan. So, during this time, no, during this pandemic season, still, I remember when we launched our home-based learning program for the school where I used to teach, it wasn't easy during the first week. It's all period of adjustment. And as I have said, if we don't have time, well, it's the learner later on who will suffer. So you have at least from morning, let's say 10 a.m. you start up to mid-afternoon. Between this would be the most suitable time for the kids to learn. I received one questions from parents. What if, teacher, we do it once we arrive home? And I immediately said, I don't think that is a very good idea. Why? Because the child has exhausted all his or her energies the whole day. And to teach them at night, as we all know, my dear teachers, right? You will all agree with me, this time is not very conducive for them to learn anymore. Simply because no more energy. And so they will not be able to pick up all the, the lessons that you would like to teach them. So flexibility in time, of course, doesn't mean it doesn't mean you do it at the time that most convenient for whoever will do the homeschooling. No, flexibility in time simply means that you can choose the time which is first conducive to those who will supervise, and most importantly, will give opportunity and enough engagement for the learners, first and foremost. Second, yeah, of course, it will be very stressful as well. The drawing here, I got this from one of my friend. Uh, it's happening, and it happened to some of the teachers whom I know during the home-based learning. No, nangyari po talaga ito. The parents, mayroong anak na maliit, and you know how difficult it is. Yeah, for lack of a better term, I would like to use the word difficult, but I would rather maybe call it, it's very challenging. You're doing home-based learning or homeschooling at the same time you have a lot of tasks to do as well. It doesn't, you're being a mother doesn't stop when you do homeschooling, or if you're being a father doesn't stop when you become uh, the supervisor of the homeschooling. No, not at all. It remains to be there. You still have to prepare food and everything. In this case, you see the child fast motion, and of course you have to change diaper. How can you do that? So it can be at some point stressful because you have to assume the responsibility of a teacher. One good thing during this period when we went to home-based learning, most, if not all parents, was able to appreciate the role of the teachers. And many of them said, "Teacher, I realize how difficult it is to become a teacher." Saludo po ako sa lahat ng teacher because many people realize this. It needed COVID-19 for people to be more convinced how valuable the role of a teacher is in educating our children. Okay? So yes, expect this. There will be a stressful moments, especially in when you'll be conducting the lessons. That's why in homeschooling, it is very important that you choose carefully the provider that you would like to engage the services. Okay? Uh, I know of some a homeschool provider. You don't need the parent doesn't need to be the supervisor. They will be the ones to provide teachers. It's a one-on-one thing, although it's homeschool. So there are that type of homeschooling. So it depends. So you have to consider, you have to factor in everything. But of course, uh, another thing to consider is the cost. Uh, it will not come as free mostly. So yeah, okay. Of course, placement test and alternative learning system, you still have to check the curriculum. Will it be compliant with the DepEd's MELC? So why? Because the assessment test later on that they have to take so that they can progress to the next academic level should be aligned with the DepEd's curriculum. If not, if it's a not well-crafted curriculum for homeschooling, then the child will have later on challenges in being able to get the required assessment result. So in the first phase of homeschooling is that you have to ask, is this provider aligned with the DepEd's curriculum? Okay, the current learning competencies. Will their curriculum be based on this? Because if not, then there will be a mismatch later on. There will be a mismatch. What the child studied for the past, let's say, 1 year, and then comes the assessment from DepEd, the child will be clueless. What are these questions all about? So you have to take that into consideration. And anyway, curriculum may be very technical, but I am defining it simply as the total learning experience of the learners. That means it involves the lesson, the learning competencies, the mode of delivery, including some the pedagogy of whoever will supervise the homeschooling activities, but it's the total learning experience of the child. So you have to consider and factor in this. Very important. This is very important. Okay. Learning content, materials, space, location, and the like can be tailor-fit for the child. So this is one good advantage of homeschooling. Okay, you can choose because in a class where there are 21 students, let's say 21 students, you see, the teacher will have to consider these 21 students, their learning abilities, if they have learning challenges, if they have some questions, the teachers will have to consider this. But in homeschooling, if you have one child to do homeschool, then everything will be just focused in that child. So it's easier. It's easier. And as we have said, stressful for the students first and foremost. It's not very comfortable for them. So to provide them with less is more will be the best, I suppose, and I believe the best approach for them. So homeschooling is like that. We don't make an attempt to bring the school at home, but to be able to redesign. And Dr. Dayagbil said, recalibrate the curriculum for them. Okay. And since we are considering curriculum, we also must take note. Since they are at home, we take the most of it by taking the advantage side of imparting values to our children. Okay? And Albert Einstein said, try not to become a man of success, but rather try to become a man of value. Because many a times as a teacher, I have heard a lot of parents said or made comments to their kids. This famous line, yan ba ang natututunan mo sa school? I suppose you've heard of that, my fellow teachers. Yan ba ang itinuro sa'yo ng teacher mo? The blame is always passed on us teachers. Are these the things that you learn in school? Okay, so now when you do homeschooling, you don't need to question anyone anymore because it is you, my dear parents, who will be imparting these values to your children, not the teacher anymore. So you will not ask. Probably it will be the other way around. The teachers will, when we go to the normal, then the teacher will ask, ito ba ang natutunan mo sa mga magulang mo noong nag-home-based learning ka or nag-homeschooling ka? So, of course, I'm not encouraging that, but I would like to underline and highlight the point that this is the best opportunity for us to mold and develop the character of the child. We've heard a lot of talks about the technical aspect of educating the children during this pandemic, but seldom do we hear people really saying and boldly proclaiming that we need to mold their character as well. So this is what I would like to share as another perspective. It will also provide family bonding, since it will be a collaborative effort of not just the parent, but whoever will be there. Okay, the mother and the father, and in fact, there was also one uh, parent who asked, "Can my helper be the one to supervise?" And my challenge to that is not really an answer, but a challenge. Kanino mo ba ipagkakatiwala yung pag-aaral ng anak mo? So if you can answer that question, then that will lead you to the understanding on your question. Okay, so I suppose that the homeschooling is, yes, it's an option, you know, but you just want to consider, because it is also at some point may not be really cheap, at some point costly, but you have to consider. I'm just giving another option should you wish to. Especially there are some parents who are still not into the idea of letting their kids go out and mingle, still with the risk. In Singapore, currently, still every day there are new cases of COVID, but it is thanks to the Singapore government, who is very efficient in handling the situation. So, people are still scared, still wear masks. So, yeah. And yes, surprisingly, it needed a law for the GMRC to be part of the curriculum now. We have the Republic Act 11476. This is the GMRC and Values Education Act. So you might want to consider this when you do homeschooling. Wala nang ibang pagkukunan ng pinakamagandang halimbawa ang mga bata, kundi ang kanilang mga magulang, na inaasahan magbibigay ng pinakamahusay na pagtuturo ng magandang asal. Okay? And when we look at this, a child can learn manners, values, and right behavior from the people who should be in the best position to teach them, the parents. So teachers who are parents should know this. And I suppose we've been doing this. Grade 1 pa lang ako, may GMRC na. And my parents taught me manners even before I entered school. And so homeschooling is just strengthening this aspect of character formation, family values. That's why when we go back to that song that I shared with you, it tells us, okay, education without values, as useful as it is, seems rather to make man more clever devil. Magiging sobrang talino lang ng bata, but without character formation, it will not really be so effective when we speak of total and holistic education. So homeschooling as an alternative to sending kids to school is, the last part here is who can afford it? It's a question of affordability as well. Okay, the materials will be there. Although there are those who, I don't know how effective it will be if you just have your materials and be the one to facilitate it to them. So it's a choice. It's an alternative. So let us ask. There will be a lot of questions to actually consider. Ano po ba yung mga mahalagang bagay na dapat nating natutunan? Will it be appropriate for my children to be educated at home? So you see, you assess, you can help. This is the role of the teachers now. Maybe the parents come to you and ask. If you see that the child is best, it's suitable for the child to learn individually at some point, of course, then we might consider homeschooling. Will my children get better education than those who go to school? The question is very challenging. But the answer is, of course, it depends on how effective the provider will be and how cooperative the parents are going to be, and at the same time, how disposed the learner to the homeschooling is. Another question that we might want to ask, will it be hard for my children to make friends? Okay, will it be hard for my children to make friends? Of course, since the child will just be in the confine of the four corners of the house, it doesn't mean the child will lose the social skills. Of course, it's a challenge. You can still bring them out once in a while to let them see the brighter part of the world. Kaya nga po, mahalagang matutunan natin the values that we will be teaching them. And social skills is part of that. Okay, so whoever will be homeschooled, it is the responsibility of the parents to at some point. That's why some homeschooling will have some engaging activities. May include sports, may include some social interaction part, not limited to academics as well, because we ask this when we focus so much on academics. Okay. What else? Will my children lack social experience? As I have said, and not at all. They can still go on with it. Will my children be accepted in the work environment in the future? Of course. This is one thing. I think the mindset that we should have is that if we don't allow them, if we allow them to skip 1 year rather than choosing an alternative for them to learn, then we might compromise their future. But if we have the mindset to choose homeschooling as an alternative for them to progress in their academic journey, then their future is secured. And as I have said in the previous slide, they can be a valuable asset in nation building. Look at this picture in Africa. Okay, it's a very challenging part for us, but we have a choice. It for some it will be very luxurious to bring their child into homeschooling, which of course we are not in equal situation. But as I have said, if we have that capacity, then why not choose for homeschooling or a home-based learning? And we find ways to help. And I've known of a lot of schools who provide homeschooling for, I mean, subsidized. So yeah, we just find ways to give them so that they will not end up. You see, these kids, they are not really financially gifted, but the willingness, not just of the learners, but of the parents as well. And in the end, we learn your child's education is priceless. And as we always believe in how important culture is, I'll go back to that song, Nanay, Tatay, gusto kong tinapay, gusto kong kape. Lahat ng gusto ko ay susundin niyo. Siyang magkamali ay pipingutin ko. See, if we try to use that in our character formation of our students, our learners, our kids, see, it's not giving so much good emphasis because what he's saying is if you commit a mistake, then you have to pay for it, even if it means harsh punishment. So that's not character formation. Your child's education is priceless. Even though homeschooling may cost a lot, but it is not really the education that we're paying for. It is beyond measure. And so we have to consider it with utmost importance. So my challenge for you, dear teachers and dear parents, is that we don't see our role as something which is separate from one another. Teachers and parents are not in competition with who will take over the child's education. We can work collaboratively. We don't need a new curriculum. What we need is a new mindset that we all must be united in making sure that our child is educated, they learn no matter how the situation is. COVID-19 will not stop our child from reaching their goal because we are all one in this. Thank you very much, and I hope I was able to share with you important insights on homeschooling. Maraming salamat po, and God bless us all.
Sir Joseph, maraming salamat po sa inyong napakaliwanag at insightful na pagbabahagi ngayong araw patungkol sa homeschooling. Gusto ko lang po i-reiterate sa sinabi or sa talk ni Sir Joseph on the critical role of the parents in, holistically forming or in the character formation of their children. And sigurado ako sa madaming pang natutunan ng mga participants natin na mababaon nila sa pagtuturo, lalo na ngayon sa tinatawag nating new normal. Ngayon naman po ay bibigyan natin ng pagkakataon na sagutin ng ating mga kapitapitagang mga speakers ang inyong mga katanungan patungkol sa kanilang ibinahagi ngayong araw. So may I invite once more Dr. Dayagbil and Sir Joseph sa ating floor so that I can give to you the questions raised by some of our participants here on Zoom or in Zoom and in our Facebook Live. Good morning po ulit, Dr. Dayagbil.
Good morning, Joseph.
And Sir Joseph.
John.
Yes po. Dr. Dayagbil, I have a question here coming from Europe. Isa sa mga nanonood po sa ating Facebook from Europe. The question is, how did you apply culture-based administration and management at CNU? And what gains were you able to harness by adopting such practice and principle?
Okay, so we are happy now that there is one from Europe listening to us. And this is a very good question because although with time limitation, I was not able to share that. Cebu Normal University is a delivery university of cultural education programs. So we have a Master of Arts, major in cultural education. So every time we are making our programs and recalibrating our curriculum, we always consider the localization aspect of it. Like for example, I will give you a very specific example in Karkar. Karkar is a heritage city. So in our social studies programs, our professors and even our student teachers teaching English, teaching math, would always have an example in the context of the community. So we use our symbols, our cultural experiences in the context of our lesson, and especially in student teaching because Cebu Normal is really known for a center of excellence in teacher education program. We make sure that at the center and at the heart of the lesson planning of the teachers would always be the concepts on the culture, making use of symbols, churches, and even also the other concerns, cultural concerns in the community. So we embed it to make sure we embed it in the curriculum because that is only one way of seeing the gains of it. So the second question is, what would be the gains? We are very proud that as our teachers go to DepEd, we claim that based on their experiences and even in their feedback in the alumni survey, they would always say, ma'am, we are being tapped by our supervisors, ma'am, because they said, okay, you're from Normal, sige, you know this, you make it culture-based because we do not like to use apple. So instead of A as an apple, we say, use A as an artist, no? And then they will say, you will be the one because you have already the knowledge on it, since you are putting culture as the center of whatever things that we are doing. That is as far as curriculum. As far as our daily social activities, every time we have our extracurricular activities and we have our programs, we make sure that we prioritize all these cultural dances, the tinikling, etc., even if not linggo ng wika. So that's why they would say, normal. Yeah, they would always have these dances. Although we do not neglect some of these very, very modern grooves, but we always will make sure that we will have these programs and we showcase our own heritage, dances, songs in Cebuano, for example. Then they will sing, they will interpret. So that is as far as our conduct of the different activities. So I can mention about all, but holistically, we are approaching it via the holistic approach from the curriculum to pedagogy to how we implement our own activities in the university so that the moment our students will go out, they are already students who are embedded and imbued with the love of culture, the Philippines, and the value of our local culture, the entire country, so that they can be proud of who we are when they represent us wherever they would go.
Wow, thank you for that answer, ma'am. Ang ganda, no? So, culture is integrated not only in intermission numbers, no? As we always know it kasi po, no? Madalas sa intermission numbers lang po ng buwan ng wika, lumalabas lang po ang kultura. No? Pero in Cebu Normal University is not only found in the performances, no? In the events, but also even in the curriculum. Thank you, Ma'am Dayagbil, for that. Sir Joseph, we have a question here po coming ata din from abroad po, no? The question goes as, time is an ablaze construct in global capitalism, a luxury of those people who have the wherewithal to survive comfortably on a day-to-day basis. How can this home-based teaching or schooling be realistically applied to economically impoverished areas in Manila with both parents and children engaging in backbreaking toil in order to survive?
Okay. I guess I've touched this aspect in my presentation, but nonetheless, I'll try to reply. Well, as I have said, the first thing that we consider is home-based learning, and homeschooling for that matter is an alternative. It is not being imposed, and therefore it's its choice. The consideration, of course, for as the one who sent the question said, economically impoverished areas in Manila. So therefore, it will not be an alternative for them. Okay. Of course, we have the Department of Education trying its best to, during this time, still provide education to all, which is free. Okay. So that will be the choice for them. Homeschooling definitely will not be, because even here in Singapore, which is
Yes, sir.
practically not having some impoverished economy, the parents also did not at first like the idea that the child will be left with them for them to take the role of the teacher. So it's not just all about whether or not you're able to afford it. Okay, so it's just but one factor. But of course, if the parents, because of some compelling reasons, they needed to go to work, and even going to work will not provide them with enough resources to avail of these services, then it's an alternative that is not for them.
Yes, sir.
So it is never being imposed, it's just an option.
All right, sir. So homeschooling is an option,
Yeah.
basically, according to Sir Joseph. Yes, thank you, Sir Joseph. Dr. Dayagbil, I will be getting this question po coming from our Zoom chat. This is coming from Frank Eli Morales. The question is it possible to have a face-to-face yet flexible learning mode in higher education sector? Since we need to produce professionals that will serve our community and for our country as well. How the administrators will craft a plan for this to avoid future conflict or shortage of producing quality professionals, both in medical and non-medical courses and programs? I think Dr. Dayagbil, as the president, can actually answer this, question po.
Yeah, very, very challenging. And that is also one thing to look into. Now, possible, like you can have in non-risk areas, you can have a face-to-face delivery. But your question is, do we have a face-to-face and at the same time flexible? That's possible. The face-to-face can be done, but the flexibility comes in the context of the pace, the product. Remember my definition of flexible learning. So you can have a face-to-face contact if you feel that it is a non-risk area, but the flexibility there is that when you will assess our students, when can they possibly submit this? That is the pace, their own pace. And how can they possibly show the kind of competencies that we would like to have. Very, very important. We are offering a College of Nursing and hoping that maybe, I hope CHED will grant us later on the College of Medicine, because we are into consortium with Vicente Soto Memorial Medical Center. That is also a very good hospital in the city. So we look into, especially with the nursing programs. Now we go for, initially we said, okay, because there are laboratory programs in nursing, so we will have a very limited face-to-face. But in our assessment, we can have flexibility because we have what you call the simulation laboratory. So what we do is that in the flexible aspect of it, especially when our face-to-face is very limited, then when we go assess them, we will look at them in a virtual simulation laboratory. So that is having face-to-face, but providing a flexible option for them as to how will they show their competence and when and where. That's the pace and the product. So in the context of medical courses, I agree with you, Frank, that it is very difficult. That's why for the first semester, we are trying to delay the offering of purely laboratory courses. And CHED allows that. We have series of meetings with the Commission on Higher Education among presidents, and CHED allows that for the meantime, the laboratory courses that would really need an entirely, like engineering, for example, nursing, and then putting on for nurses who would get the blood pressure, etc. Then we delay it a little. But if we cannot always delay it all the time, so we are preparing. So how do we go about it? We have certain flexible assessment measures for our students, whether virtual or they come to us, 2 students at a time in the first semester or second semester, to show to us if the competence on getting the pressure and putting injection and asking the patient will be there, because we will not anymore fill them to the hospitals right now. So rest assured, Sir Frank, that it's really very true, very difficult, but we are doing it. In a way, as of the first semester, we don't have yet a face-to-face, and then we are putting in more or less hanging yet the lab. But we can have face-to-face, and we can provide flexi in terms of assessment, that is the product, in terms of the pace, in terms of the place. And maybe
Yes, ma'am.
we'll move for that area.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Dayagbil. Last question for Sir Joseph. I think this is concerning about the assessment in terms of homeschooling. I think the participant is actually asking, how should it be done? Or how, can you give us an overview on how could assessments be done in terms of homeschooling, since the teachers will not be actually taking part of it most of the time?
Based on the materials that those who will engage homeschooling services will be using. Okay, there are some homeschooling providers. Of course, it comes in package most of the time, including the module and the curricular program. By that, it includes also their assessment tools. If I may share with you, when we had the home-based learning here in Singapore, that's the first question that most teachers would ask. How will they be able to do the assessment? It is very obvious that because, we tried this, primary 1 student getting into the Zoom class side by side, mother on the right, the father on the left. Then we tried to do an online quiz. Oh, all the students got perfect score. Even those who, during the normal face-to-face class, are not really performing well. So assessment is a very crucial part of homeschooling. Okay? Homeschooling and homeschool providers will provide assessment materials. They will also provide the criteria how it will be assessed, and the tool also will be provided. So I think where the question is coming from is the reliability of the result. If the child gets full marks, 10 out of 10, is it really the competence of the child? So it is a collaboration between the parents and the homeschool provider. If the parents will cheat during homeschooling, then who's losing the opportunity to learn? It is not really the homeschool provider. So the base of this would be cooperation and honesty. It works that way. If the parents during the assessment period cheats, and therefore he's not cheating actually on the result, but on the learning process of the child. So
Mhm.
it's a question of reliability and cooperation of the parents who will be tasked to deliver and supervise and invigilate the assessment, whatever type it may be, a quiz or performance task. So it's really a collaborative effort.
Mhm. Thank you, Sir Joseph. And I think I have one last question for the both of you. The both of you can answer po, no? And since we are actually having this webinar on culture-based education, ibabalik ko lang po, no, sa challenges, ang dami nga pong challenges nitong novel situation po natin, no, under the pandemic. The teachers are now, clamoring for trainings just to learn how to utilize properly the online utilization po, no, nitong I mean yung online mode ng pagtuturo. Ang dami certifications sa Google, certifications sa iba't ibang programs and platforms. But then despite these challenges, what do you think are some simple suggestions or recommendation on how can we still provide or at least integrate this culture-based education? This is for the teachers po in particular, no? Can we still integrate this one since ang mga bata din, hindi rin po sila nakakalabas eh. So paano po natin ito talagang maipapasok pa rin despite sa mga kakulangan ng resources, no, sa kakulangan ng pagkakataong mag-explore sa labas at sa iba't iba pa pong mga hamon sa dulot ng pandemya po na ito. Paano pa rin po natin maisusulong ang culture-based education sa homeschooling and even po dito kay Ma'am Dayagbil sa flexible learning po? Any of you po can answer first po.
Yes, John. I think this pandemic is an opportunity for us. There is a great latitude that the can do to integrate culture in the way we deliver our flexible learning modality in this pandemic. Why? I'll give you an example. Even in our learning materials. Now, we can try to adjust our learning materials so that our students who cannot go out will have to make use of whatever it is at home, like even our garden. How will they improve the garden? And that can be integrated in our science subject. So in other words, teachers, if you will think there is no PhD COVID, there is no PhD with that, but this is an opportunity. Every challenge can be converted in an opportunity. And I see that in the kind of materials that you will give to the students, in the activities that you will provide to the students, so that in elementary, for example, I remember when we had our children's literature and then we taught Cinderella. So we told them that, could you look for in the house, who is this Cinderella? Why is she a Cinderella? What kind of culture do we integrate in a Cinderella that there is a stepmom who would try to be cruel? In our culture, how is that? How should we do it? You see, even a simple foreign story of a Cinderella can be anchored on culture. Like, do we really have that culture? How can you be a modern Cinderella in the modern environment? A modern Cinderella goes out of her way to help. So you see, is something that you just have to innovate. And for me, this does not close the door. This opens a wider opportunity for us teachers to get whatever we have in our locality, integrate it into our classes, because I don't think our supervisors will get angry. You just have to get the right material anchored on the outcomes that we want, and then they are all very, very familiar to our students, and they will learn because they are locally and contextually made.
Wow, thank you, Dr. Dayagbil. Sir Joseph, what can you say about the question?
I think it will not be very difficult for us, and it is not something new because as Filipinos, we are culturally inclined. If I will share with you, before I left the school where I used to teach, I was assigned to teach science class, and before we went to the lockdown, the circuit breaker, I thought of how will I be able to engage my students to still learn, because science is best learned when it's experienced. It is always experiment based, I believe so. So I try to integrate Filipino values and culture. So I before we went for a closure of the school, I gave them a performance task. And what was this performance task? Magtatanim sila ng kamote. So, and from there springs forth the lesson, the importance of being prepared. And they were surprised because most of them were born here in Singapore. So I taught them how important is this planting of kamote. We bring to the culture that we are an agricultural country, and I brought them to the consciousness that yes, we are in a first world country, but still our root is we are all Filipinos. So we take every opportunity as a learning moment. Every single second is a chance for us to integrate culture, which will not be very difficult anymore because, especially in homeschooling, before it's very difficult for parents to tell the kids to get inside the house. But now, no, they are confined inside, so it will not be at least difficult to impart on them all the necessary lesson, culture education to be more specific and more valuable for that matter. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sir Joseph, and thank you, Dr. Dayagbil.
John,
Yes.
may I come in? There is a question from Jocelyn in
Sure,
our
ma'am.
chat. Maybe
Apa.
we need to answer this. Jocelyn Nervades, could you read this one, Sir John?
Sure, ma'am. Ma'am Jocelyn Dervades is asking, just want to know your insights regarding professor and college na may edad na and hirap makasabay sa demand ng online learning. I think this is true to many seasoned teachers in the Philippines na medyo challenging nga naman po talaga mag-aral pa ng kung ano-anong mga learning mode resources online. Paano nga po pala yun, ma'am?
Yeah, I'll share with you one strategy that we are doing in the university, because that is also related with civil service policy, that those senior citizens, 60 years old and above, will not be compelled to report to the university even after the pandemic. So there's a policy there of civil service. So that means we said, so what do we do if we have a lot of 60-year-old faculty members? So this is what we are doing and we are planning in the university. We have what you call the junior senior team. The senior who are may edad na do not retire because they said, Ma'am Mini, magre-retire na lang kami, Ma'am, kasi we don't know. I said, no, do not retire. We will pair you with a junior, a faculty who is techie. Your competence and with the techie of a junior, so junior-senior tandem, then you will be in a class. So that would be a class delivered by a senior faculty who cannot report and who might not be able to go techie with a junior faculty, and we call that as avatar strategy.
Wow.
So avatar would mean that there is somebody helping you around. So have a very seasoned teacher with competence, pair it with a techie savvy and a good junior teacher, then the result will be very, very good.
Wow.
Mag-retire, Jocelyn. Huwag kang mag-retire, Jocelyn. Kasi avatar strategy, the junior-senior tandem.
Yes, opo. Thank you so much for that, ma'am. And I love that avatar strategy, na humaharap pa rin yung nakakatandang faculty yet may nag-a-assist sa kanya. And that will make everything possible and work under this new normal. I think we have a last question here that can be answered by the both of you din po, no? Sabi talaga dito, and I think this is common because of the, poor technological infrastructure in the country. Sabi po dito ni Ma'am Cornelio Lina or Sir Cornelio, some places can only offer the modular learning modality because of the lack of internet connection. How can we deliver workshops for the students in such special programs for the arts? For example, acting workshop in theater arts.
Yeah, that's correct. That's one of the areas also that we are looking into. For example, events in the university, swimming. For swimming, how can you offer swimming when it's very difficult when you go modular? That cannot be. So my suggestion for that is, especially when it is not anymore a low risk area, we deliver the module. And then the students, if it's self-instructional module, the students will learn it. And we have also what you call para-teachers. So we also get para-teachers. In fact, that is also one of the initiatives that we are doing with the Department of Education in Region 7. Our student teachers become the para-teachers. So if they belong to that province, then they get the modules, and then at their own pace, they will say, now we are ready for this workshop on the arts. But the workshop will only be for or 5 in a gym, because there are gymnasiums in the different localities, right? So 4 or 5 in a gym with a para teacher and a teacher. So that is our ongoing talk with our deputy director in the region. So we're looking into that. For low risk areas, we have self modules. They will learn how to do it, and the hands-on will be done in the gymnasium with 4 or 5 learners only, so to really observe our health protocols, and then there we go. So that is still possible. But for the high risk areas, we don't do that because that might pose a risk to a lot. But for low risk areas, there are so many already all over the country. So we just have to identify in coordination with our health officers or even our barangay captains. And that is where the role of a teacher is. So we can always really navigate. Nothing is impossible.
Yes.
As long as we really have the desire to do it.
Yes po, ma'am. Dr. Dayagbil. Sir Joseph, you want to share something?
I think we may be technologically limited, you know,
Yes.
but imagination will always be there, and it is never ending. We just have to be creative, you know. And here during the home-based learning, we're able to teach baking, painting, drawing, all online. And there, although we are gifted with the technology and internet connection, still we still experience some problems. So do not lose hope, my dear friends in the Philippines. You say, "Oh, we're in the Philippines, mahina ang internet connection and things like that." Here, we also had that difficulty. There was even a time that one internet provider down, so
Yes.
we were not able to. So we had to be very. We just have to explore and
Yeah.
imagine, and everything will always be fine. We
Yes.
will not be running out of resources. There will always be available things like this. We just have to be creative and open. At the
Yes.
end of the day, we have to be always considerate with our learners because they are
Yes.
our main concern.
Yes, sir. And totoo po talaga that necessity is the mother of invention, no? Talagang may stretch po talaga ang ating creativity. And I would like to share once again to our participants what our first speaker, Dr. Alan de Guzman, shared to us in terms of that question, no? He provided this what you call SEM or SEM for teachers, the 3 powers of teachers in this case that we have. S means simplify, E means enrich, and M means modify. So these are the 3 powers that we have that we can actually utilize in order for us to deliver still the quality that we need to give to our students in this current pandemic that we are facing. And I guess, if talaga pong walang internet connection and hindi talaga pwedeng lumabas yung mga bata, no, hindi talaga available na makonduct mo yung workshops, I can also see some workshops being done online pa din talaga. Or if talagang modular lang po yung technique, I think being conversational in the module, simplifying it, and making it possible for the students still with the limited resources will make it work. What do you think po?
Yeah, I think I like the first word, simplify. I think
Yes, sir.
it's what we have to consider.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to one teacher, and mathematics to be more specific. There's a lot of things to cover. And I said, during this time, you may coverage and completion are not the most essential things now. It is how the students really able to absorb the lessons. And so to simplify everything is the most. That's why I am advocating less is more during this time. Uh, Focus on, that's why it's very good and consoling that DepEd come up with a minimum essential learning competencies. Minimum essential. Well, it's very simple. But at the same time, we have to consider whether or not really the students will be able to be engaged, to be engaged. Because even if we are technologically advanced, if we are not able to engage the learners, then it doesn't make sense. Kahit pinakamabilis yung internet connection, if we are not able to hook the students to be part of the learning process, then it's useless. It's not just about technology, it's not just about connectivity. It is engaging the learners to a meaningful process of learning.
Thank you, Sir Joseph.
Yes, John and Joseph, I agree with you as a rejoinder that we will have to make sure that all the things, we always would convert challenges into opportunities. And when you said that modules can also be highly engaging, I agree that what is very important is the experience that we provide to our students. That's what Joseph also said. So when you will have cooking in your TLE class, then you will have a module. Okay, you get like adobo, the usual adobo in a culture-based community. So how do we cook adobo? So don't you know that there are ingredients that we have? So you get one in the like this. So it becomes a highly engaging, even if it's just on paper. And
Yes.
that's not very easy to do, huh? When you're as if you are talking to the student using the module.
Yes,
And it will really, really entail a lot of challenge in terms of writing.
Yes po. Yes. Sabi niya nga po ni Dr. Dayagbil, let's get out of our comfort zone. We will learn a lot from this kahit po bago po ito. Maraming salamat po Dr. Dayagbil and Sir Joseph. Napaka punong-puno ng kaalaman ng ating discussion and yung mga sharings niyo po. Ayan mga kapwa ko guro, naway marami kayong napulot na mga aral sa ating mga tagapagsalita sa ikalawang bahagi ng ating webinar series na inyong magagamit sa pagtuturo at pagsulong ng culture-based education sa inyong mga mag-aaral. Maging malusog at ligtas, ito po si JC Mesana ng Kolehiyo de San Juan de Letran, Manila. Thank you so much po, Dr. Dayagbil and Sir Joseph once again. Mabuhay ang kulturang Filipino.